Missed opportunity is number one.
Yeah.
Not saying congrats, Nick, in the speech, or the alternative.
Thanks is not a speech.
Congrats. I know. I thought the mics were off. But the other one that we had talked about potentially was saying, thanks to the team, thanks to everyone who worked on this cool game.
Yeah, these are things that were come up with
But the
when we were
biggest
sitting
missed
there.
opportunity, obviously, which is not realistically achievable, but was pointed out by every Thumbs listener, was we were in the same space as Samuel L. Jackson, and we did not back into his arm.
You totally could have just started backing
That is a
up.
huge... If just look behind and be like, where's that guy? And then just start backing up
Yeah,
and
you guys done fucked it up.
Oh, it's you.
Oh, it's you.
God. We weren't on stage.
Mr. Jackson.
We weren't on stage. with
Oh, I'm sorry,
Samuel L.
Sam.
Jackson, but the opportunity to say, oh, thank God it's
Was
you.
it? No!
Games, video 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 games.
It's 12, 12, 12 out of 10.
And this is Idle Thumbs 87, and I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
And I'm Sean Vanneman.
And you guys won all the VGAs.
No, there was way more we could have won.
You won a VGA. You won the important one.
We won 5.
Wow, really? Did you really?
Yeah, we really did.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah.
They only
Weird.
announced 2.
They announced one on the red carpet, which was questionable. And then they announced one. But then just like rolled them up. It was like ting, 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 ting,
Like into a
ting.
carpet?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
That's cool.
Jake is the one who doesn't want to talk about the VGAs.
Oh, I don't mind talking about the VJs. This is just already really weird.
It is really strange. Of all the things that somebody said was going to ever happen ever, this is not one of the things that I'd put on the list.
Yeah. So for anyone listening who doesn't know this, the game that Jake and Sean were the leads of, The Walking Dead, won the Spike TV video game award.
Yeah, it
for
won
the best video
It
game.
won Game of the Year. Telltale got Studio of the Year. The Walking Dead also won Best Game Adapted from Something Else, Best Downloadable Game, and then Melissa Hutchinson, who's the actress who plays Clementine, the little girl in the game, won Best Actress Performance.
So I feel like
I was really
usually-
stoked about that in particular.
Yeah, that was the best part.
That was
for
the
sure.
part where we actually like were like hugging and stuff, and
Right,
like holy
yeah, yeah,
shit!
yeah.
And
But
she was so
the-
happy because she was going up against like Emma Stone, who's a famous actress, and things like this. So it was a big deal.
The part that was notable about all of this for me was that we attended the VGAs.
Oh my
I
god!
know. This is the thing, right?
That's
Like,
the part that's probably the most worth talking about.
only reason
most
I
of the
went.
time, like, we wouldn't talk about a thing that some of us like got a bunch of acclaim for something.
Right,
But
but
the
like-
fact that it was this, so I was at work when this happened, so
we
I
should
wasn't.
couch
I
this,
like
yeah.
missed it live, and I went and I loaded up the video to like from the Spike website. I got like 20 seconds
It's
in.
impenetrable.
I'm like, I can't watch this. I couldn't do it.
Our PR
really
guy,
Like, it was awful.
And what did you do? You were able to change the channel. The best thing is we step out of the limo, and literally the first person.
let's back that up. We took a limo to the
Out of
VGAs.
the limo.
We didn't book that limo.
I stepped into it and said to myself, this is the first time I've been in a limo since prom. Which is true and which was very weird.
Yeah. But I mean, it's also how do you get? There was like 12 of us. You got to get 12 people across town.
Yeah.
I don't know. There
else
was an
is it?
Escalade
Come
limo.
on.
Also,
Let's just Escalade limo. I was going to say there was a practical application, and then I realized there's an SUV limo.
it was one of the weirder experiences. Like you, Sean, have done weird entertainment industry bullshit in your life, I imagine. I just sort of famous Vanneman and all. But like, it was held at the Sony Pictures lot, which used to be Columbia Pictures. So it is this just crazy, classy, like 1930s classic Hollywood sound stages, like a place that I've only really seen from behind the scenes videos and Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure.
Yeah.
So we rolled up to that in a limo.
Water tower, the whole
all that hilarious
everything.
stuff. But then the Spike TV red carpet thing was happening there, and I immediately just turned into an introverted weirdo, and along with half of Telltale, got out the back door of the limo to avoid the red carpet.
But then you come around the limo, and literally the first person Jake encounters is Hideo Kojima. It was incredible.
I just sort of looked at him awkwardly, though. I couldn't do anything.
Oh,
with
there's
that.
a photo.
Oh, is there really?
Oh yeah, you haven't seen the photo of Jake looking over his shoulder, named after the episode "Don't Look at Him, He's Hideo"?
No.
Yeah, that's a photo that
it's just
exists.
me.
Oh my god.
It's a classic picture of me near Kojima.
It's a good photo. We'll put it up somewhere.
Yeah, it's super frustrating to me that the people who are nominated for the awards come out and then aren't put on television. Like, we met just in the sort of lounge area before the show. We met, I think it was a producer and the lead writer of You Don't Know Jack,
Yeah.
who were up for best social game. And You Don't Know Jack, I turned into an idiot because
We ended up having dinner with those guys, and they're wonderful
Because
guys. They're really great
I've loved
guys.
the You Don't Know Jack game since I was in high school. I was a dorky at-home beta tester where Berkeley Systems would mail me a CD once every 2 weeks with a new build of the latest game and all this stuff. So meet that guy who's been on it since I started playing it was insane.
Oh man, that's awesome.
And they were there.
They were so
But
nice.
I don't remember You Don't Know Jack ever going up on stage to accept an award.
They never accepted. They never
Even
were
though they
given an
won.
award. Yeah, they won and were never given the award on the air.
That's ridiculous to me. And it seems
sucks.
it's
And they flew out
frustrating.
from Chicago.
It's frustrating because it seems like they have all the pieces in place for this to actually be a thing that is representative, except the actual contents of the award show itself
Yeah,
is
it
stupid.
doesn't make any difference.
It's very frustrating.
The pieces make no difference because the fundamental organization that creates it and maintains it, doesn't matter what the fucking pieces are.
Yeah,
It feels weird to be saying all these things after accepting
exactly,
the highest
and that's
award.
the thing,
And that's what
right?
makes me
That's
feel
the
like
thing.
a douche.
It's like it's
No,
sort of
but
like looking
you've already
at a gift.
said the actual body of
Sure,
people who specifically caused you to win the award. That's not where you're.
Right.
That's not where the beef is.
And I actually want to make just a couple of statements. It was everybody we actually encountered, every human being, every producer, every PA, every celebrity, super gracious,
I don't doubt it.
incredibly nice. Zoe Saldana stopped us after we walked off stage and was congratulations. It was really great game. Good job, guys. It was really nice.
Yeah,
And
I totally believe it.
the mood behind the scenes, everybody was just in there was a lot of levity. There wasn't a lot of weird TV Hollywood bullshit stress, which there is at all these things usually. But it's hard that doesn't add up to anything when the programming is just the in between. Oh boy. Anyway, did you see the? No, you never saw that. Did you see the trailer for what people are assuming is the new Metal Gear game? Phantom
No, I
Pain?
didn't. I saw 4 seconds of it as a GIF. That was just a very, very high resolution, well animated guy, stumbling around a room and falling, knocking shit over, and then the caption "QWOP 2." So that was. I saw that before I had any idea what it was depicting. This morning, I was just
GIF is really funny.
I posted
That's amazing.
the GIF, and it was I don't know what game this is, but this is hilarious. And then a bunch of people were like, "Oh, it's some Metal Gear thing." Or
Yeah,
something.
it's the new Metal Gear game, and it was announced under the name of a different studio, not Kojima Productions.
It was announced under Moby Dick Studios. It's the really clean,
But
nice
apparently,
logo.
if you go to the Moby Dick Studios website, the president's name is an anagram for Hideo Kojima. Also, the title card that says The Phantom Pain, there's a bunch of slats cut into it, but if you can just overlay the words Metal Gear Solid, and it fits perfectly into them, so it is just a Metal Gear game. Also, it was a weird CG trailer that put up a bunch of questions. Which just means it's a Metal Gear
Just means it's
trailer.
a Metal Gear
Yeah.
game. Yeah.
But it was am I alive? Is this hell?
What is game?
It was. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
QWOP. Man, there's coming at it from all angles.
Oh, QWOP
QWOP
is
is
game.
game, from what I understand.
QWOP, The Phantom Pain.
It was a good.
Man,
Funny that
speaking of QWOP and Bennett Foddy, Sports Friends hit the goal by $2,000 on in
Out of $150,000.
Yeah, they
Wow.
ended up on $150,000.
3 days ago, when somebody said that was going to happen, I would have said
They were
no, for
80,000
sure.
out or
they
more.
were way, yeah.
What
they were-
happened? Was it just a big
There was a huge
grassroots
push.
They added a ton of extra games to the $60 tier. And
A lot of press and developers really
they
rallied
really
behind it on
rallied
Twitter
around it,
and
yeah.
on just the rest of the internet, but they just barely pushed by, which is super the best. Yep.
Yeah,
Because
that's really good. It must be stoked.
everything in Sports Friends is what I like.
Yeah, it's really good.
What are the games?
The main ones are.
Because can you back it still, or is it over?
No, it's
No,
over.
it's over.
Okay.
There's Johann Sebastian Joust, Hokra, Bari Bari Ball, and Super Pole Riders.
Yes.
And then also tennis.
those are the 4 that are going to be turned into a
PS3
console
games.
game, into Sports Friends. The game is supposed to be a same screen multiplayer gallery with those 4, but then by backing it, you also get the PC version of Tennis and a fuckload of other weird prototypes and small projects by those guys.
Cool. They had some good T-shirts. No. That's
They had one
one
good T-shirt.
That's LA Game Space. Never mind.
Just getting all of our Kickstarters confused here.
It's easy. There's some cool ones out right now. Yeah.
Yeah. We played that Spaceteam.
Spaceteam
That
was
was pretty.
good.
That was pretty sweet. Right before the podcast, like literally 20 minutes ago, we downloaded Spaceteam for iOS, which is a free game.
I wish we could stream Spaceteam.
We could.
We should have. We could have.
How? I mean, you'd have
you'd
to
use a
actually like
webcam.
point cameras at the
No, you wouldn't.
phones.
You just watch three people yelling things at each other. I mean,
That's not as fun. Well,
I guess
okay.
it's not
I
as
guess we should
fun.
talk about Spaceteam for a second. Yes? No?
Yeah.
Spaceteam is it's an iOS game that you can play on iPhones and iPads, where each person who's playing, like you need multiple players. It's 2 to 4 players, and each person has the control panel of a spaceship, but you're just responsible for certain tasks. So you'll have 4 or 5 switches with weird names, and then everyone else also has panels of switches, but they do different stuff. So your monitor will come up and it'll say like flush vents or whatever. But you don't have a vent button on your machine, so you have to yell flush vents, and then someone else has it and they'll press it and say okay, and it's supposed to create the situation of a spaceship on a crazy space adventure where everyone on the bridge is working together to solve these problems, but the problems are completely insane. So at the top, you see your ship sort of slowly going increasingly fast and going out of control, and your control starts smoking and melting, and especially as people start fucking things up, alarms start going off and things,
Panels fall
off and
it
start
gets
shaking around, so you have
disastrous.
to use the gyroscope of your phone or your
Stuff gets
finger
all
to
wobbly and
rehinge
melty.
them, like goo starts pouring out of
Yeah.
things so you can't read them.
The craziest one is the translation error.
Yeah, one of our waves, or one of the sectors we were in, had a translation error.
That's the one we finally lost, right?
Yeah. That's where all of a sudden, I guess, whatever the universal translators in our eyes were stopped functioning, and we could no longer read the controls on our own ship. So a command would show up, and then you just have to guess which lever that corresponded to, which of course means that you accelerate the death of your ship because you're just.
You're putting in all these incorrect commands that you're trying to get them to work.
But
it was super fun and
I don't think
hilarious
you get
and
good at
ridiculous,
it.
though.
I think
Yeah, totally.
I think we have to go like in like a
Like a specific
circuit.
order. Yeah, there were times when we were doing that.
Exactly,
and
but
it
in-
felt really solid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it just a constant clockwise call it out thing. Yeah,
the constant clockwise call it out.
Yeah.
I wonder if there are
call it
space
the triple
team.
C.
Oh, the triple C?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a path to success.
A space team tournament would be really hilarious to me.
where you have a team that you put together.
You have, you have a space team.
Yeah.
It's 4 people.
Space team.
Oh, that's true. Just see how many sectors you last, and then once you blow up, bring in the next space team, basically. But
Yeah.
watching people who are a super efficient space team would be amazing.
Oh my god, we'd all need matching
Like
tracksuits.
I imagine there would be methods that would come out where you'd end up just because I'm sure there's a finite number of controls that exist, so you
Right.
could probably invent acronyms for them. So when it's saying "get ready for commands," everyone's just like CTFB 4527, like where everyone just so you shorthand know who has which controls and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Like
yeah.
I'm sure you could come up with some weird
man.
like space team drill team.
Do you think the controls are pre-baked as collections, or do you think?
No, I mean like you would just list off the acronyms quick for all the controls that you have, and then everyone else, due to just extreme space team drilling, would internalize that and go, okay,
SPT.
like okay, he's got
STD.
yeah. So then you would just be
Space
like,
team drilling is definitely STD.
yeah,
Sorry.
just
You've got, yeah, right. SP15, like that's your range. It was like
Right.
this time it goes from 1 to 5.
Right,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, just,
get ready for that.
some of them are just buttons you press once. Some of them are toggles that have on and off. Some of them are like analog dials that go from like 1 to 7.
Yep. There's
all different.
There's sliders, and there's also ones that just have a huge, like a multiple array of buttons where things can have
Yeah.
different specific states.
Yeah.
And yeah. Also, occasionally an asteroid shows up, at which point everyone has to shake their device to dodge the asteroid, I guess.
There's one where you have to flip it upside down.
And you have
for
to,
some
everyone has to
reason.
flip it upside down and
Is that
hold
a
it.
barrel roll? Is that what that is? I don't know what that's
No,
supposed to mean.
I guess it is. But yeah, everyone's supposed to turn their device upside down temporarily. It's a weird co-op experience. It's a cooperative UI game. That's what
pretty
it's
good.
actually called.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's the best.
I enjoyed
It's one of
it.
those games that I mean, I think these are the kind of games that succeed on mobile platforms. It's one of those games that is just fundamentally a good idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where the kind of games that are in our industry tend to be games that succeed on execution. And like most of the ideas have either been thought of or people have stopped trying to think of them for the most of the time.
Right.
Like when you're spending millions of dollars on a game. Whereas I feel like the games that do really well on mobile platforms are the ones that are just this. That's just like Someone had a funny, clever idea, and they just made it well enough to like get that idea across.
It also would be really hard to play on any other platform.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. You could play it on like a DS or something, maybe. But what's the difference? Yeah. It's really fun.
I don't know how long it would be fun, but
I wouldn't mind getting really good at Spaceteam.
I'd play it a couple more times for sure.
It's a game I could imagine playing like once or twice on a like irregular basis, as opposed to for like 3 hours.
Also, it costs $0.
It's also free. Yeah, so go get it.
I wonder if they're planning on.
Well, it has upgrades. You can buy additional challenges and other stuff like that.
Oh, it's free to play. But you're getting like more content.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I don't mind games like that.
No, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I assumed it was going to be one of those things where it's just free, but then like in 2 weeks they just raise it just so that they have that period of getting.
Oh,
It looks like because at the end of the round there is an exit button and an upgrade button. So those are the only two buttons available, which I think was supposed to get you like in the thrill of being a space team.
I didn't even. I remember reading that and I never even gave it a second thought.
Oh, I pressed it earlier.
Yeah, I didn't.
I keep just wanting to say,
Well,
it's pooched.
Yeah. Space Team, it's cool. You should play it. It's free.
Are you going to play Far Cry 3? I guess you own it, so you will play it.
I own it, so I will play it. I just haven't had any time.
Just watching over my shoulder, it seemed like you. I thought I heard you say, but I don't think you did. Go. No, maybe not for me.
I probably did say that. I already have it, so like it's already all downloaded on my Steam and everything. Like I just haven't. Well, it's on this.
Right, I was pleased to walk in and see that it was downloaded. Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
No, I'll play it. I have to admit though, watching you play the first like 20 minutes or whatever made me. It dampened my already sort of tempered excitement.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I basically stopped playing to record this podcast right at the moment where I felt like it was about to become the game.
And to be fair to the game,
which is unfair,
we didn't play it long enough. Yeah, exactly. Like we didn't play it long enough to actually have any. It's not even worth talking a lot about it because
you haven't even escaped the tutorial zone.
Exactly. I killed a snake, but I think everybody kills that snake.
That old snake.
I killed a snake, but everyone kills that snake. It wasn't you didn't own that snake kill.
No, that wasn't that wasn't
part of your story.
That wasn't an emergent story event that happened.
No, it looks like
me.
You didn't do anything in that game that wasn't prescribed for you.
No.
So far, anyway.
Oh, actually, you weren't here for the sneaking at the beginning.
You snuck around?
You were there.
Oh, that was very
when I was when I was upset about that. There's a guy you're sneaking out of the prison place, the captive zone, whatever that is. You've been kidnapped, and you're sneaking. This guy's teaching you to sneak. I was not captivated at that moment.
Sure.
And there's a guy who's readily accessible to you. He's got an NK-47 on his back, and he's like butchering meat. And you're supposed to sneak past him, and he's like 6 feet away, like we're very close to you.
Yeah.
So the guy goes in front of me, so I go and I stop behind the guy who's butchering the meat. I'm like, I wonder how long I can sit here. And the guy's like, "Let's go, Jason, let's move." I'm like, "Give me a minute." So I sit there. I'm like, "Well, I can just sit here." Like looking around. He's got a gun on his back. How do I not just grab this guy's gun, pull him to the ground, and just choke his life out of him? I have another guy with me. So I was like, I bet I can do that. Like, there's no way I
Why
can't
would
just
you be able to do that?
There's no way they're not just going to let me punch this guy out. So I went up to him and tried to pull triggers and stuff.
You're a crazy person.
And click on him.
You've played a video game before.
He turned and killed me, and my tutorial experience was over. I died in the first 90 seconds of the game.
That's like you playing the first 20 minutes of Half-Life 2 and being like, why can't I just choke out all these guards when I haven't even picked up a gun
they're
yet?
looking at you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a completely different experience. Like, if you go up to a guard in Half-Life 2, they respond in turn. They, push you away and keep the fun going forward. This literally ended my playthrough. I thought that was kind of a weird move. I just can't believe they put him within physical,
Yeah, it's weird.
No other game would do that. Without giving you a weapon. People, I can't think of a game that would do that. If this was, especially a first-person game, where there's just no way. If you go touch him and you explore, you're murdered. And that also under the auspices of Far Cry, which feels like the anti that, but
I don't know. I'll
give it some time.
I will give it a shot as well. Probably this weekend.
You were also within the first 10 minutes told to stay within the combat area, which is a surprising Far Cry message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of those things where you like walk too far and then it's watch out.
Well, a guy gives me $20 and says, buy a gun. And I'm like, I know Far Cry. A guy gives you $20. You don't have to buy a gun. You go fucking steal a Jeep and run over a zebra. I'll be back. So I ran away and I almost failed that one.
You failed the mission of spinning.
I don't know.
money
Just
in
the
a
idea.
store.
Just the idea. That's a good story. If the kid like gets rescued, kid escapes from the jungle prison, wakes up in a guy's village, and he's like, "Here's $20. Here's $100. Go buy a gun. You gotta save your brother." And you just take the $100 and go, "Nope," and leave. I don't know. The game supported that story. That'd have been good.
Yeah.
But no, it does feel. It's funny. It's a game that instantly feels more at conflict between expressed narrative, explicit narrative, and its sandbox roots.
Right. Well, Far Cry, Far Cry 2 was also uncommonly dedicated to, bridging that gap.
Yeah.
But, which in ways that a lot of people took issue with, for sure.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But yeah. I mean, also just looking at you playing that game, I mean, the game definitely wants you to like, be less pissed off than Far Cry does, right? Whereas Far Cry 2 just doesn't give a shit about you really that much.
But you know what? I've been saying that to people who've been asking me about Far Cry 2, like especially in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
People at the office have been like, "You're really into that Far Cry game, right? Is this 3 going to be good?" I was like, 2 is great. You should play it. It's $9. It's $10 on Steam. And I started saying that to people like, "Oh, this game doesn't give a shit about you." But then I realized that's not the case. The game just actually thinks you're smart. The game just really respects you. The game's just like, you can handle yourself.
That's true.
And I like that about the game.
No, that's true.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was just gonna say this is it's getting a little field of that, but I still think it's related. Just looking at you, one of the things that really, really struck me as I was watching you walk around was just how like bright and saturated and more just normal the game looks. Not normal to like
there's a wide spectrum
any
of color.
absolute sense of normality, but just normal compared to other AAA video games.
It has like Far Cry 1's color palette, basically.
Yeah, which is the same color palette as a lot of games.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the lighting model was very typical. Like, it was, whereas Far Cry 2 is immediately striking with that very, like, desaturated, almost mellow.
Not a lot of bright blue. And turquoise.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like, that game, and so
at least that you remember, there is blue sky in that game often.
No, there's totally blue sky, but just the savannah has that, like, everything about the world, even the guns, right? Like, even the metal of the guns is more muted than how things look in most games. Right. And I think that's a very memorable part of Far Cry 2.
Yeah.
Everything just has that restrained palette, which
seemed
really
very similar to like Just Cause.
Yeah, Just Cause is a good
I think that's
touchdown.
Yeah.
It was a weird first impressions experience watching you play Far Cry 3 because like
I wonder if some of that has to do with. Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
Oh, it was just like what Kirk was talking about. They still are beholden to a lot of stuff that I like about Far Cry 2. But
you loved that shit.
But it seems like it's in a very. But it's only. It was a really surface level weird thing. Like when you went into that control room in the base and your buddy was like, pick up that stuff, and you clicked on it, and then the first person hand came up and like picked up the cell phone, put it away, picked up some other things, and then fucking held a map in first person, folded it up, and put it in the inventory. I was just like, fuck yes, Far Cry. And then you escape.
The map is
so hold on, you escape out of the base, and then your fucking guy unfolds the map and sets it on a rock, and you and your brother are looking at it, and then your brother gets shot in first person camera. And I was like, fuck yes, Far Cry. But yeah, then you press the button to open the map in the game, and a full screen UI comes up. It drops you out of the game and puts you in a full map UI. And that was why put it in the cutscene?
Yeah.
When it's not in the goddamn game.
It's funny.
They built it. They animated it.
This is like completely
they made that map.
Like bullshit conjecture. So I understand that. But like I played a lot of Assassin's Creed 2 Brotherhood and 1 and I haven't played 3 yet. But a lot of the sort of the visual paradigms of Assassin's Creed feel like they're seeping into Far Cry.
Steve, I don't know what he meant by it necessarily because I haven't played Far Cry 3 yet, but Steve was like, Far Cry 3, this is the best Assassin's Creed game yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
It seems like the UI, some of the UI paradigms from Assassin's Creed.
Well, just sort of like when I discovered a new map area at the very beginning, they teach you to discover a new map area.
Like,
there's those like crazy, like, they're basically chopper cam.
Right, exactly.
Like jump the 10 miles really fast. Yeah, like whoosh, and whoosh to a new place in the map. Whoosh, and then whoosh to a new place. But they look like basically like a helicopter camera or something.
Well, they just look like a modern music video or something.
Yeah. And that visual, that aesthetic is like anchored in Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
And it's funny, they're both Ubisoft games. And
They're both Ubisoft Montreal games.
Do you think it's just the same people executing different things or like influencing different things? Or do you think it is
being
just
interested in the same shit and like being surrounded by each
I'm
other?
so
and-
curious about
Probably also just cross-studio lessons learned that are...
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I understand...
Maybe there's a default camera animation.
it made the world. The thing is that people don't. The thing about that stuff, right? And in Assassin's Creed, it's like I feel like it works better. At least in Assassin's Creed 2, where you're in these big cities, and it's sort of just saying like all of this is available to you. Like go explore.
Also, it's a third-person game.
Yeah, and it's a
when you're in a
third-person
first-person game, and suddenly you're like zooming around in this omniscient,
right?
like copter cam. Like I don't know.
Like in Assassin's Creed, it makes those cities feel expansive and full of possibility. In Far Cry 3, it instantly made the world feel really small to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Jake and I talk about that a lot, I guess. But like that make like a lot of times in narrative, like that makes the world feel small. Don't do that. A lot in episode 5, actually, Walking Dead, about if this thing has to go here, and then we need this scene here because the world will feel small if we don't have it. And I think that's something you need to consider all the time. Is how big does this make your world feel?
Well, Jake, you and I were talking about that like last week about the Space Base of all things, which is just a goofy prototype.
What were we
like,
talking about? Oh,
just the notion of like how the zooming works and like what the default scale is. And
right,
stuff,
just
and,
what
like,
your
how
perception
that,
of the space is.
Yeah, how that just immediately impacts like
Perception of the space base.
Perception of the space base. It's funny, in Far Cry 3, like, it's not my... Like, this is a worthless thing to say, but I suspect that there are people for whom the zoom out and the rotate makes the world feel bigger for them because they didn't have any idea about what this sort of game they're playing is. Because if you're playing Far Cry 3, but you're usually the sort of person who plays a narrative corridor game, for the game to go woof, and show you an island and then spin around to a location and then whip back to where you are and say, make your way there. That is a way different experience than if your previous experience playing AAA console first person games is walk down this narrative corridor and watch pillars explode.
Yeah, things like this.
Call of Duty.
Or Call of Duty type stuff. So like
Call of Duty is a better call out. Yeah.
Far Cry 3 seems like a lot of the choices that they're making are trying to reach out to people who would never play Far Cry 2 and say it's going to be okay. And I don't know if that's good or bad.
That's by the way, I mean, that is the absolute universal direction of sequels to games that critics kind of liked, but didn't quite hit. Like, that's, I mean, there have been other examples where people have basically admitted that directly, like in the last recent. And like that, I mean, that's just that is the default mode at this point. It's like you have your game that, it seems like there's some potential thing there. And like people wrote blog posts about this and like people seem to like it, but like, then like, how do we make...
What other things are you talking about?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, but if you didn't, you did like a Chris eyebrow that said maybe you didn't want to say, but...
I don't know, like all that stuff about the BioShock Infinite box art. And like, it's a very common thing of just like, it's just... I mean, those are very different things. Box art versus camera, like those are.
But just how, I mean, they're all. But
that's
it's
like
all kind
a
of
goal that is common
how you
right now in AAA games.
Right. How do you present your game to a customer?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that is.
Yeah.
That is both marketing and design.
Yeah.
You know, those are the same thing.
Well, like Far Cry 3 gives the impression to me, at least, that the UI is fully modal, whereas Far Cry 2. There was no mode switch.
Yeah, I mean, we should really be fair to the game because I don't want to get angry.
Well, we just need to. We clearly just need.
We're going to put some. We're going to put some more time into this.
Yeah,
but I do
think probably
think,
longer than we intended to talk.
Yeah,
about.
But I also don't mind talking about just sort of like basic design paradigms.
No, it's also first impressions.
Yeah.
And if
this is Far Cry 3 first impressions is what this is going to be.
The reason this is relevant is because the topic that we just hit on just now is entirely about creating first impressions geared to a particular audience.
Oh yeah, good.
So like, I think it's valid for us to talk about our first impressions being probably not the specific audience that they're trying to target.
Because I mean, if you pick this game, I mean, and Steve did pick this game up at PAX. I wonder if he played through the opening cutscene and stuff like that.
I think PAX just dropped you into a live demo where they're like, "Okay, raid the space, go." Yeah. And that was the PAX thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
Which is probably for someone who's more into the Far Cry 2 stuff, what you'd
want. Or
want.
just someone who's going to be at PAX in general, even if they're not a Far Cry 2 fan, but just. We can trust that you'll know how to run.
Well, that's like the Dishonored demo at PAX and at QuakeCon was just go do this crazy mid-game mission, and we're going to preload you with a bunch of interesting powers and all that stuff. And I'm sure the Far Cry 3 demo was the same way. Mm-hmm. Whereas your first Far Cry 3 experience was here's money, stay in the combat zone. Like, what? God damn it!
Here's a guy instant fail. Like just
I did stab a guy in the neck by hitting spacebar a lot. I'm playing on PC, obviously.
That's good that you hit spacebar.
Oh, cool. Can I do it a different way? I mean, like, what do you mean?
No. You have to do that. Yeah, it is. Yeah,
That's the least interesting possible.
It is the most expressed. It is the most explicit narrative thing ever.
Oh, cool.
And before people jump on us for bullshitting about being mad about an explicit narrative, I'm not. It's just I didn't think that was going to be in here. You know, I had this.
Well,
you know,
there's nothing wrong with explicit narrative. So this is the thing that I feel like we've talked about a lot recently. It's definitely a thing I've thought about a lot recently, and I feel like that there is a difference between a game that is just fundamentally honest about what it's doing with a narrative, and a game that is trying to just be put a lot more artifice there, right? Like, I don't know. I mean,
it's sort of obfuscating the optimal playthrough.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're sneaking around, but it's like the possibility space is in fact so tiny that there's no real tension of any kind because it's just a binary. Like, but it's putting you in a position where you feel like you should be part of an actual system that your character is moving around in, but you're not at all. It's just complete nonsense. I don't know. It's a weird thing, and I feel like over the past year, there seems to be an increasing tolerance, and I think you see this in like these are all very different games in terms of the actual of like the story and in terms of even the systems and everything else. But if you look at like your guys' game, The Walking Dead, if you look at what Steve's making, if you look at 30 Flights of Loving, if you look at Dear Esther, there seems to be a lot more tolerance for some reason over the last year and a lot more potential buzz rising up around games that are largely about explicit narrative but don't try to act otherwise.
Right.
You know, like those none of those games are trying to fool you into thinking you're actually part of this like dynamic combat system all the time when you're really just in a glorified cutscene.
Yeah.
None of those games are like that. Like there are moments that are just cutscenes and there are moments that are just dialogue trees, but like they're all on their face what they are. And that's something that I think has been a really nice trend to see, just the acceptance of the broad, like critical and in a lot of cases commercial acceptance of that kind of attitude. Because it just seems to me to have more respect for the player. Like they might not be massively different in terms of actual player agency, like on a moment to moment basis, but to me, it's way preferable to be honest about how much player agency.
I agree. I mean, what it does is it totally deletes that sentence that you hear all the time in a game like critique. You go, oh, hey man, hey, should I buy that game? And they go, yeah, totally, yeah, it's really fun. I mean, the story sucks, but like you should totally play it.
Yeah, exactly, right.
But and
if the story sucks in that game, then you're just not going to recognize it.
It is just a non-existing thing. Yeah, it's and
I think that's really it takes some confidence in.
I was just going to say that
ability to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to speak for ourselves because we're more. I mean, for Steve though, right? He goes off to make his game.
Yeah,
and nobody's telling him what to do. And he believes in himself enough to say, you know what, I'm just going to tell a really great story, and there's not going to be sort of like
nothing if that doesn't work. Like if the story's bad, that game is zero.
And I love that. I love that. I think that's really great.
What do you guys think has brought that about? That is a thing that can happen now. I mean,
it's a good question.
I think a lot of it is people of our essentially our generation who have been playing games for a long time, and I think are just honestly, I think a lot of it is just even the people who aren't necessarily like tired of playing games that like they will still happily play games in that mold are also wishing there were other things at least on top of that.
I guess that's true. Like, yeah, I guess I answered my own question by thinking about Steve, whose previous game was Steve's BioShock, and Steve is enjoying the shit out of Far Cry 3. But like, it seems like Steve's deal was, I'm a game developer who's been working in the industry for a number of years now. My favorite parts of it are this, this, and this. Why don't I just do those parts?
Yeah.
And ta-da! Exactly. Like that's, I guess, which seems similar to Brendan, who's Brendan at Blendo, is just, I guess I'll just make the parts of the game that I care about.
Well, the thing that's so amazing about Brendan is that he can do that with totally different parts in each game.
Right.
Yeah. Like in one game, it's just like exploring the interesting like human connections in between the implied action sequences. In another game, it's just like, what if I just took a crazy procedural approach to this one specific genre? Like in another game, it's what if I did this like, sort of homeworld-esque thing, except just the most stripped down specific version of it possible. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Brendan explores these very specific what ifs, I feel like, in each of his games. And it's crazy to me that they're all such different what ifs.
Yeah.
That fucking guy.
But that does feel like his process talking to him, where it's just what if,
Yeah, absolutely.
And it, I like talking to him a lot.
Yeah,
it's always like,
that's brilliant.
It feels like the first 90% of his answers to the what ifs are just failures, just abject failures.
But that's so cool too, right?
Awesome.
Because that's not like,
it feels like he's exploring something.
Yeah, and that's another thing that is probably one of the reasons most of these games of the kind we're talking about. Well, there are other reasons too. There's marketing and so on, but it's probably one reason they're largely being made by much smaller teams. Is that if you're working within if you're at like a big AAA studio, and especially if you're like owned by a publisher, or if you have a publishing deal, well, actually even more so if you have a publishing deal but are not owned by a publisher, you've got to put a game out at a specific time, and like you can't really do what Brendan does and like try some things for a while and see and like do a bunch of prototypes. Like you pretty much are going to be working in a pretty well understood genre because that's the only way you have even a chance of getting your game done for a predictable development length and budget. And so that just completely discourages like any, making games like this. And the closest thing you get to them are weird, like David Cage, like top heavy, crazy things that,
right.
Don't end up actually, to me, don't feel like they've ended up actually having proportionate impact to some of these other games, right? Like, right. I mean, that game probably sold more than a lot of these games did just by virtue of being so huge, but like relative to the amount of money spent on it and relative to the copies it sold, it feels like that has had less of an impact than the combined effect of some of these smaller games that have been coming out.
At least on the industry and the developer community, if not on the
That's
audience.
What I mean. That's why I say proportionally to like how much they sold and how much they cost, right? Like as opposed to in absolute terms.
Yeah.
But it would be very surprising to me if stuff like Heavy Rain ended up influencing and resulting in a bunch more Heavy Rain-like games. Where it would not be at all surprising to me if maybe that's not the case, but like where if some of these smaller games, or like if the game you guys made, it wouldn't be surprising to me at all if that actually spawned more games closer to that.
Right.
So I don't know. And that's ultimately what counts in the long term. Like that's what actually makes a difference to posterity.
Mm-hmm. You guys want to take a little break?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Video game.
Spray spin grill.
Disable
arc string.
Did it lock sub
Rotate monopulsar.
Oh fuck! I have that.
Lock sub
Set hydraulic bubble to 2.
Set flex lens to 1.
Set laser sphere counter to 3.
Enable steam screw.
That's me.
Laser sphere counter.
Laser sphere counter to 3.
Spin grill.
Lock sub teaser.
Increase pico saucer to 3.
Did we live?
Holy shit!
Yeah, we nearly died.
Oh man!
Wow.
Sector 8.
Oh, good, no anomalies.
Video game.
He was just off stage when we walked off, wasn't he?
Yeah, but he wasn't like not on TV.
That's true. But
God.
you know what? Had I witnessed you backing to Samuel L. Jackson's arm, I would have told everybody.
I was so out of it when we were up on stage. Like
I don't remember anything from the actual event.
You couldn't see anything because of the lights. You couldn't hear anything because there were no monitors. So I just heard Dan and Kevin's speeches before ours, and they just sounded like I couldn't hear what anyone was saying. And then when I left, I just sort of walked off in a haze holding the award in my hand. And then I got halfway to the green room place, and some girl came up and was like, sir, you can't take that award. She took it from me. So we only have one of these.
This is the prototype.
But if I had my wits about me, I probably could have walked right off stage and Samuel L. Jackson would have been lingering around nearby.
Right.
And then in the dream world where I was like fully cogent, we could have maybe taken a picture of me backing up into his arm and having him say Idle Thumbs rules. And then have him put an Idle Thumbs .net bumper sticker on his car and be his best friend forever.
Yeah.
Why didn't that happen? Why was I just a confused mess?
The list of missed opportunities is long.
Yeah. You gotta have like a rocket pack. I could have got those fucking headphones though.
I can't believe we didn't get those headphones in the green room. That was our biggest mistake.
There was a wall full of headphones.
It was really, really nice gaming headphones.
At least that lady called us by our correct name and didn't call us Gary.
It was Alison Hayslip from a place.
All right. So Emil Mirza, do you get ready for real?
Are we back?
Yeah. Yeah, we're back. We've been back. We're talking about hilarious VGA shenanigans.
Okay.
All right.
And we're back.
Emil Mirzad says, hey guys.
We never left.
Hey, what's his name again?
Emil Mirzad?
Okay.
I mean,
we're back.
Probably incorrect. I don't know.
We'll say Emil.
Hey guys. Well, the reason I say that there's a Y, not an I, so it felt like it seems maybe it's different. I don't know. But like, you know who's pronounced Emil? Emil Pagliarulo from Bethesda Game Studios. It's not Emil, it's Emil, even though it's spelled like Emil.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, go your way.
Yeah. Anyway.
This will be settled in an email.
Anyway, Emil says,
Please
about
write in
72 hours.
questions@idlethumbs.net. We're going to take an informal poll of readers named Emil.
Or maybe Emil can just write it and say that's my name.
No.
Okay, we'll poll the readers. Check the blog. Yeah. Check our Facebook.
We don't want to go by anecdotal evidence. We want.
No.
Yeah. We've statistically
This is America,
found that
democracy.
we've statistically determined that your name is pronounced Emil.
Check out our Facebook.
Emil, we've got some
poll.
news for you. It turns out that I just said your name wrong.
All right. Anyway, he says, "Hey guys, I was wondering, how does being part of the game industry affect the way you experience games? Do you think the lenses through which you view games are useful, or the opposite when you judge a game? Do you sometimes wish you could experience games like a normal person? I'm a game designer, and I can't play a game without questioning every design choice or trying to figure out what makes the game good or bad. Not only that, but the more time you spend working on games, the more you see the bits and pieces. While I don't think this is bad exactly, understanding things does have its own joy. Sometimes I wish I could just experience the game. One of my former professors, who works as a game ergonomist, said he found playing games exhausting because he couldn't separate play from work. That seems like one of the most terrifying things ever. What do you guys think?"
See the first half of this podcast. I'm actually, I have 2 points. One, personally, is I'm pretty good about just, if I'm in digestive mode, I'm in that mode. Like, I'm a different person than I am when I'm thinking about designing a game or I'm at the office. Very, very different. I can snap into that mode while playing a game, but I feel like I can control it. So that's good. But this, second point is, I feel like it's harder in games than anything else, though. Like, I feel like maybe I'm
Because
wrong.
they are actually systems.
Yeah. Like, I feel like Steven Spielberg can go watch the new Scorsese film like anybody else.
Yeah.
Unless there's something crazy
I'm
technical.
sure there's still
you know.
something going on there, but I do know what you
Yeah.
mean about, and we could be, as you say, it could be totally wrong with it.
If you're Steven
But,
Spielberg.
like, as a musician, I don't ever think about, when I'm listening to music, I don't ever think about like, oh, I know what chords he's playing, lame.
Right.
I mean, actually, I guess, okay, that's wrong. I do think about that sometimes.
But you know what?
But like, but it's not, it really impacts me a lot less than with games.
And I think the least impactful probably has to be being an author. Like, I feel like to be a good author, you have to read.
Yeah, except for genre fiction, probably, where there's like
yeah,
really
that's a good point.
prescribed,
Yeah.
like
oh, look what he did
forms
there. With
and,
the,
like,
yeah. Oh, I bet that clue sort of, things like that, where there's more of, that's a good point.
Or
The
like
more formless the art,
abstract
the
arts.
more...
Yeah, right, exactly. The more formless,
Is that this is the broad general... What do you think about that?
I don't know.
And also, the more commercial and large team a thing is, the more likely it is to have prescribed forms because you need to mitigate risk somehow.
It seems bold to me that a person who writes for a living is not going to be the most critical of other writing that they experience. That
I think
seems
being
ridiculous to me. I think
think
that
being
authors
critical
are
is
going to be like,
different.
I just can't deal with this, and would just close it. Whereas most
really?
people would read
Most
the shit
authors
out of
I
it.
know are like, I'm totally
Voracious
reading Harry
readers.
Potter 7 right now.
I think writers tend to be voracious readers, but I also think there's a difference between being critical and having like high artistic standards and having this sort of just like be constantly waylaid by the like seeing X-ray into the
That's
craft
true.
part of it. I think those are different things.
Like somehow
'Cause
you're
the more
just
the more technical a form is, the more of that stuff there is to see.
Yeah, that's
like
fair.
there's definitely a lot of craft obviously that goes into writing. There's like immeasurable amounts of craft, but like you don't need to work. You're not like, oh, the wood pulp they used for this is bullshit. Like games
Right.
is all of that stuff and more. It's
Yeah.
like all of these weird,
Like right now, I mean, that's actually a good point. Because they're like, look how shiny these objects are.
Yeah.
Like nobody at home is saying that. Maybe they are. Some people are.
Some people are.
But
I think
the
one
bulk
of the
of the,
interesting things about games is that because games do tend to be so formulaic and on the design side, I think a lot of people who do just play a lot of games probably end up getting a version of this that is some subset of the game developer version of it, where they just get so accustomed to this one like shader that's just in fashion right now or whatever. You know, like things that just tend to be seen in a lot of games for like 3 years straight.
Right.
You know, and if someone who isn't playing tons of games all the time and like just constantly being immersed in that stuff is just not going to be nearly as aware of that.
Yeah.
I guess this is just what you guys were saying a second ago, but that the fact that every single aspect of a game is constructed is probably why that's like...
You mean it's built on sort of a technical framework?
I mean, every single thing in a game is artificial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like, I mean,
every single thing and everything is artificial, though.
I know, but when you write, you're writing in the language in which we speak. When you play a musical instrument, there's still just physical properties, and it's just a thing that's actually built, I guess. Whereas in a video game, every single thing is going through way more layers of abstraction of all kinds.
Synthetic.
Yeah, like it's just
Okay.
there's nothing in there that isn't like for it to appear on screen in front of you.
A computer has to have it.
Someone had to make a choice and input it into a computer. Whereas like typing sentences out and the way that your brain processes that is so like there's
It is the language in which your brain thinks.
there's 400,000 billion things in between what your hand is doing and what's going into your eyeball.
Right.
And all of those, if you make a game, you can recognize every single layer of that. Whereas
Right.
when you're writing, you're like, okay, that your word choice is weird. Like I don't
Like nobody's
the
seeing your Lua code.
All you can talk about is the language used to
Yeah.
actually construct what you write. Or like with music, it's the same thing. Whereas with a
That's
video game,
interesting.
you can be like, that
music
camera
is-
choice is weird, that lighting is weird, your lighting model is weird, your animation is weird. There's seams in these polygons. Like it can break everywhere, and you can know all of them.
Well, music's interesting because music has probably a wider range than any other form of art in that respect, because it goes on the one hand from the actual human voice singing in natural language all the way to a 100% synthesized sound that has no basis in
I
anything.
think the sort of formal criticism side of it probably comes in more to people who are really into the production side or who are into electronic music.
Yeah.
Like people who would be like, "Oh, you're using that flange thing or whatever."
Yeah.
So to answer the question, do you, Jake, when in the off chance you digest a new video game, are you able to set that stuff apart?
I think that I am very able to do that. Like
You generally seem to just be an appreciator when something is good. You're like, oh man, look what they did there.
that's the thing that gets me actually is I've found that I'm not hypercritical of stuff unless I deliberately get myself into that mode where I'm like, I wonder how they did that. Oh, I'm not sure about that weird like art tech choice, but the way that I appreciate things.
You call that stuff out a lot, though.
But
I do,
always
but
in a positive way. Generally, it's 99% of the chance he's like, did you see? I don't know.
It's not my natural mode. When I hang out with other people who do game development or other people who like are critical of games either technically or artistically, my brain flips into hypercritical mode. But when I'm just sitting by myself playing a video game,
I think that's true for a lot of
I'm
people.
just fully enjoying it. But my appreciation of stuff does often have a layer of abstraction, which disappoints me at this point. Like it's not my criticism of stuff, but instead, like I saw someone on the Idle forums describe it like this as well. And it doesn't happen to me all the time, but when it does, I'm sad. It's when I'm like, when the emotional impact hits me because I appreciate the way in which it was executed in the game.
Right. Yeah.
Where I'm just like, oh man, you guys pulled that off. And instead of it being like, oh man, the game hit me with this moment, I'm just like, holy shit, people were able to
That
orchestrate
must have been
it
hard.
Yeah, where it's like people were able to orchestrate a thing which then made events happen inside of me. It's really it's
what's
really
interesting?
odd.
That's a thing that I totally know what you're coming. It's that version of that differs for me so much from type of media to type of media. Like in literature, I love that feeling.
Yeah.
Because the thing that resulted in that happening was literally just one person like crystallizing an abstract thought out of their brain onto a page. And there's something that is like pure and elegant about that I really that I love that feeling. It is less intoxicating with a game when you're like, oh, like 40 people figured out how to make this software. Like, you know, I mean, that's a douchey thing to say.
I was like,
that was
it's like, wow.
I don't know how to phrase it the way that I mean without being a jerk, because I don't mean it that way. Like it's
okay.
I don't know. It's one of those things that I don't know if I'm going to be able to communicate well without making it sound worse than I actually feel in my brain. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how to explain it.
This is a place where you and I will probably actually really fundamentally disagree, which is kind of interesting to me because I think there are many people in the world who alone in a room can hone their craft to the point that they can create that sort of response in you. Not that many people actually get published, but like I think that it always makes me incredibly pleased in it. Probably, I was going to say an order of magnitude more than when it happens in a book, because it's so rare that a group can achieve that.
I was
kind of
going to say the same thing. Where it's like, you guys managed to like dodge the clusterfuck.
There are
dozens
and dozens, if not hundreds, of novels published in a year, which one can read and have a genuine emotional reaction to, or just a genuine feeling of something new. And when that happens in something that was made by 4 dozen people collaborating, that's super impressive to me. Like that requires a singularity of vision plus a shared enthusiasm plus just a shared skill level plus my input going into it and making that response come back out of it when it gets cycled through those systems. That, like, you're right that it's less pure, I think, as a feeling, but I think that it's intellectually really impressive to me.
Oh, it's absolutely incredibly intellectually impressive. That's my point, is that it's more of an intellectual appreciation, I think, than the pure emotional one. I mean, I think that's kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, maybe so.
The way you led that statement was by saying it bums you out when you feel that way.
Right. Well, like, it's frustrating to feel genuinely moved or pushed or just have, just something fire in my brain that is not an experience that I expect in a game and just going, holy shit. But then at the same time, I immediately go, my brain's like, how do they make this work? Like, what the fuck?
It's like the one rare positive version of like breaking of a suspension of disbelief, where like your suspension of disbelief is broken because you're seeing the artifice, but you're appreciating it. I don't know.
Or it's like, I don't know. That happens in a lot of mediums. It also happens in movies, and I'm sure that people who like are film students or who work in film or whatever, like the good version of that and the bad version of it happens. But it's a funky feeling. So, but by and large, when I'm just playing a game by myself,
Also, the reason that I regret even saying as much as I did about this,
you ass.
Because I knew that as I was saying it, I knew that there's like it's going to be literally impossible for me to backpedal away from it. Even by saying it, I've overstated the amount that it actually like impacts my brain. Because the reality is that that is not even the version of the answer to this question that is actually the thing that I would answer with. The thing that I would actually answer with is something that has nothing to do with any of that, which is that, well, I guess it's not true. It is related, but it's different, which is that being in the games industry is the thing that has kept me still liking games in the first place. Like that to me is the actual, at least just for me personally.
Do you think you would have grown out of them if you weren't?
I don't think I would still be looking at a game like Far Cry 3 and even be considering playing it. Like I wouldn't. Like the fictional experience that game wants to sell me is not one that I would care about in the least if I weren't deeply interested in all of the things that, as you say, the team has to go through to make, like, these are the cards we've been dealt. We're in an industry where most of the big successful games are about these themes. All right, fine. That's the hand we've been dealt. How do we do something interesting with that? Right. And like, I haven't played enough Far Cry 3 to know if it succeeds or fails, but that's the reason I'm playing it in the first place is to see if it does or not. And like, as a result of that, I'll play games like that. If they have some like connection to a design ethic I really like, but I've basically entirely stopped playing games like Call of Duty or anything similar to it where it just has that thematic content but doesn't exist in an interesting design space that I care about. Whereas 10 years ago, before I was working in the games industry, I played games like that all the time just because I thought that they were fun and whatever, which is totally fine. Like, that's fine. But if I were not in the games industry 10 years later, I probably would have discarded that entire thematic grouping regardless of design nuances. Right. Is kind of what I'm saying.
No, that makes total sense.
So most of the games at this point that I play just purely for my own pleasure tend to be, I mean, a lot of the stuff we've talked about, right? Like, I mean, just other experiences that are less part of that kind of like big AAA, very thematically narrow group. So for me, being in the games industry is what has allowed me to keep enjoying games, but I definitely have my scope has still narrowed a bit regardless. But it does mean that when I find a game that I find really intriguing or impressive, for whatever reason, I tend to be very like strongly so about it, because whatever it would intrinsically draw me to it is amplified by the perspective that I have. So that's the answer to the question that I wish I would have led with, that is the actual more meaningful one to me. So
listen to that one, ML/Emil.
So I don't know. Does that make sense to you guys at all?
No, totally. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I was with you. Good question, by the way, obviously, because it sparked a 15-minute conversation.
So I haven't read any of these questions ahead of time, actually, which is unusual. So we got lucky with that one. It was good. Patrick O'Shea says, we naturally assume that in a multiplayer game, since that the world is rendered similarly identically to all players, but does it have to be? In Team Fortress 2, you could always play as the blue team. The announcer, teammates, maps, etc. could all adjust so the enemy is always red. That might not be that meaningful, but I know I've changed colors playing TF2 or Halo and other games and started shooting my teammates out of color-coded habit. I read about co-op in Dead Space 3 where one player had a hallucination the other player didn't see, which makes the hallucinating player sound like a crazy person to the partner, at least the first time. Since each player has their own display these days, I was wondering if you could think of any good examples of this being put to use or where it could be put to use.
It's happened. I mean, there's two things. One is like politically, America's army wouldn't let you play as
you're always the good guys.
Always the Americans,
which is really suspicious.
Yeah,
I think.
The politics of America's army are suspicious at their core.
No, I know they are, but I mean that choice just highlights that. Right?
Yeah.
In Counter-Strike, you're always the terrorist, no matter which team you're on.
That's true.
Where's that Counter-Strike mod? Where's that political statement?
Yeah.
No matter which team, you're always for some reason trying to plant the bomb, even though one. That would feel weird.
That doesn't make any sense.
And then
one of them, just the bomb is already there, and the other
there is sort of like different it's not aesthetic, but like things like the Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow multiplayer where like Mercs versus Spies, where you have a completely different design at your disposal.
There's an iOS game. There's an asynchronous wordplay game called Letterpress that came out in the last couple months, and it made the really odd choice of no matter where, like, you are always blue.
Oh, that was a great choice.
Oh, it's weird.
But
I think it was the exact right choice to make.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it confuses the shit out of me because...
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Because when you're looking at your girlfriend's phone, you're like, what's going on over here?
No, it's because, like, when I make the first move, I'm blue. When I accept someone else's game and make the second move, I'm blue. And that totally, like...
Oh, that's so funny that like, sends you sideways.
But see, the thing is, after the first turn, you're never going to remember that again. Like, when you load that up the next day and you have 13... Because I played that game as well. And when you load that up tomorrow and you have 13 games that are at anywhere from turn 1 to turn 20, if the only thing I ever have to know is I'm blue... It's the only way I'm not going to drive myself crazy.
It is a good plan, but for some reason it frequently disorients me.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
I got disoriented as well, but after playing it a bunch, I came to the conclusion that it was the only choice that made any sense.
So it's a good example for this reader.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those sort of those choices that's made completely for design clarity over long
depending on
term.
Who, like in this game where someone else initiated, my face and my score is on the right side of the screen.
Yeah.
But in this game, which I initiated, my score is on the left side of the screen.
That
but
seems
I'm
like
always
the wrong
blue.
choice.
And
actually,
that's where
you should always be on the left or whatever.
Because my brain looks and goes like I sort of for a while had internalized blue is on the left because I had started a lot of games when I first got it, and then suddenly I was rematched and I was on the other side. But that
seems like a less solid choice.
Yeah, but you always being blue in that instance makes sense for the reasons you describe. It just the game is a little inconsistent about it.
I totally when we back when my friends and I played Halo 1, pre Xbox Live when we all just played the same screen, like 2v2 screen sharing, just same screen, which is still like I've talked about it on the podcast before, but just some of my absolute most all-time best multiplayer experiences ever. And we got so hardcore at like 2 versus 2 Crazy King. Like we were just so competitive and so cutthroat. Like every game came down to like single-digit number of seconds. We would always play the same color. Like each team would always be specifically red or blue.
Yep.
Because we were so it messed with us so much to suddenly have to be killing blue instead of red.
Right.
It's funny. I used to play Worms Armageddon with some friends online, like who were just random across the globe people. But for probably the same reason, we would always, even though it was manual color assignments, we eventually just had team and personal colors because otherwise people would just blow the wrong person up all the time totally. Where you'd internalize yellow equals James or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, to go back to letterpress for half a second, I think that the reason that they sort left to right side based on who initiated the game in that particular game is so you can just look and see wins to losses versus who started the game. Like who had the first move versus who didn't is probably actually important in that game.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's
that game. That is to add to like my not never ending, but my list of like a half dozen games so far that I downloaded played a bunch of, got burned out within a week, and then I've never loaded up since. Also, what's funny is that I can tell that that's what happened to all the other people I played against too, because I had all my games that would like quickly go, or I would actually only check them about once a day because I had on my iPad, which I leave at home. So it was just like once an evening, I would cycle through all my games and play them. And like after a week, like just none of my games updated anymore. And like I kind of got burned out. And when I went back and checked, none of those games had the other players had not gone again yet.
Yep.
Like it was exactly what happened to me with Draw Something and with Words with Friends.
Words with Friends took you like a year for that to happen.
It was like 6 months, but it was a while.
Yeah, those are during your Boston times.
But every one of these games, though, it's a shorter.
Yep.
Like each one so far has been like this was the shortest one yet. It was a week, and it was really well made. It's a really.
Yep.
It's probably the best looking, like best feeling out of any of those games, just in terms of nice presentation and UI and stuff. But it's funny when I think about the graph of my like patience for this ship that is just over the last
your
year
attention?
and a half
Yeah.
has just it's tanked.
Letterpress has actually stuck with me as enjoyable more than a lot of the others.
Oh, that's cool.
But not. I don't know why necessarily. I think I just have friends who have continued to play
Sure,
it.
yeah,
but
yeah. No, exactly.
no one I know really plays Words with Friends anymore, and definitely no one plays Draw Something anymore.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
That seemed
Games.
that seemed like a thing that happened for a while, and then people
It's
decided
funny
it was
how
not a
that
thing.
really is just like the whole like social mobile thing is just the craziest like perpetuated gold rush environment where you still have to like to be successful you have to like hit some zeitgeist or you sell like 300 copies lifetime and that's it.
But the
like, that
window on
seems
it
like-
is closing and closing and closing. Where
It
Yeah,
feels
it's
like
insane.
that anyway. I could be wrong, but it seems like just based on all of the things you hear from indie devs and like the insane disparity between the successes and like everything that isn't a huge success is just crazy. Drew Dunage says, "Hey guys, I'm Drew Dunage, a game design student from New Jersey. I will be a volunteer at GDC 2013. I've never been to a GDC before, but I'm hoping it'll take my connections and knowledge to the next level."
Oh, it will.
It probably will.
Maybe
I'm wondering
floor
if you guys
3.
can give me some advice to help me take advantage of my my time spent there.
Just go to as many talks as you can.
Yeah.
It's the best.
And talk to people a lot.
Yeah.
That's like I remember when I started going to GDC in the early 2000s, like the environment of being surrounded by all these creative people in the games industry was by far the most valuable part of it for me.
Yeah.
It was like crazy. It felt like not even real. I couldn't even believe it. It was totally insane.
He's a game design student.
I think so.
Is that what he said? Yeah. And there is like a
There's a game design workshop. The 2-day thing? Is that what you're thinking of?
no. He's young though, or he's
Yeah.
new to the industry, I should say.
Yeah.
Not necessarily young.
Yeah.
There is like a jobs pavilion sort of thing, like with, and I would say, make the rounds because if you're looking for an internship or whatever you want to do in the summertime, make the
reason
rounds
not
for
to.
sure. But like, honestly, I'm in two different modes when I'm either in there or I'm out experiencing GDC.
for sure.
And you want to talk to like experienced devs when they're not in there.
Yeah. That's definitely true.
Yeah, so just that's a little word of the wise. Just because you're not going to get the best version of the guy or gal when they're sort of vetting young talent or doing anything like that.
My advice is probably, well, it's clearly not for everyone who goes to GDC because there are some people who go entirely for technical stuff, but I would recommend if you're interested in design, stick to the design track and probably go to either specific postmortems or game designers talking about a very specific subject and not as much like 15 ways we learned how to do a thing when working on this game, because you're going to end up getting a talk that's effectively the same thing that you're going to read on Gamasutra or in Game
for
Developer
sure.
Magazine.
Yeah.
Whereas like
That's a good point.
like my favorite talks are usually ones by people like Clint Hawking or Will Wright talking about slightly more philosophical things and
Exactly.
like things that are just built to be delivered in a rhetorical form or like just
Well, for sure. And then on the other side, you have the design talks by guys like Jamie Griesemer who give like really nuts and bolts, but like in the like best exploded version of that.
Yes. Right.
You know, where it's just, even though that's theoretically the kind of thing that a designer would write on their blog, like, I don't know. There's something that is
hearing someone's thought process from their brain
Yeah.
as they do a really huge drill down into a very, very specific piece. That's also really interesting to me.
That stuff is those are the parts of GDC on the formal side of GDC that are irreplaceable, and then the counterpart to that is just being surrounded by those people physically and being able to talk to just people around. You.
Also, walk up New Montgomery to the Sentinel and get a sandwich.
You got to.
But don't tell anybody because I don't want the line to be too long. But get there a little bit before noon because they sell out.
Yeah.
But it's a secret between you and I.
Solid. Yeah.
Dear readers.
Dear reader. Everybody else, rewind your podcast.
Go to Chevy's.
Go to Chevy's.
Yeah,
go to the Thirsty Bear.
Go to the W bar. All right.
Don't go to the Sentinel's garbage. Delicious.
This is a bit of an indulgent email, but I'm gonna read it anyway.
Chris, you're
Brian-
so cool. I love you.
No.
My
Well,
binder says
Also, no.
From Steve.
The beginning is also going to sound the opposite of what I just said. But Brian
Nick.
Lovehorn says, 9 months ago, I got diagnosed with bone cancer. When I found out, my friends banded together to support me, buying me gifts and distractions. My older brother bought me an iPad, and before he gave it to me, he loaded it with every episode of Idle Thumbs.
Oh, your brother. No, just keep going.
He said he'd been listening to it for years, and he said I needed to. He was right, and I listened to it obsessively during chemotherapy. I'm in remission, and my prognosis looks good, but now I have a suspicion. About a week after my last chemo session, I loaded up episode 39 and started to listen as I drove to the doctor's office. About 5 seconds after I heard Jake's voice, I got extremely nauseated and had to pull over.
I read this email.
After listening to the dulcet tones of Jake howling about horse bags and goatsy while chemo drugs were pumped in my veins, I figured one of two things had happened. Either I'd grown to associate Idle Thumbs with nausea and sickness of chemotherapy, or those drugs were placebos and your podcast cured my cancer, but also with normal cancer treatment side effects. I'll let history decide which is the truth. Brian from Chicago. So yeah,
That had to be read.
I had to read it.
That had to be read.
Yeah.
Glad you're feeling better, Brian. That is good news and a well-written email.
Yeah.
So I guess we can end on that, I guess.
Yeah. All right.
Write us at questions@idlethumbs.net.
Yeah. Also, there was a new episode of the Bookcast that came out on Friday,
yeah.
and it's monthly, so
Yep.
go check it out. It's good.
3 Moves Ahead still exists. Still good. Good podcast.
All this and more at idlethumbs.net.
Yeah. Twitter, Idle Thumbs. Internet.
Promo code WIZARD.
We're getting really good at this last part.
Definitely.
We really
Figured it out. Idle Thumbs is brought to you by the Idle Thumbs Network. Visit it at idlethumbs.net.
Next week. God, I can't make my butt fart when I want to. Damn it, no, you know what I mean, though. With the chair.
Video games. Enable Flippiston.
Oh, got it.
Set alpha table to 1.
Got it.
Set disable Cartesian key.
Got it. Turn off phase
Engage
snorkel.
Cartesian key.
Okay, done.
Sequence genome. Okay, fucking that wasn't so bad.
Man.